What's going on? This is Richie Contartesi with the Next Play podcast, and this is an episode of Sales Leadership Ascension with myself and our star, Cody Schill, VP of Sales for Encore Solar, where we talk all things sales leadership, how to build your team, how to retain them, how to improve performance. And today we're going to be talking about how to choose a play. So if you have a sales team, you have people on your team that are struggling or that you're meeting with on a weekly basis, or ad hoc, who are having challenges on calls, on visits, and you have to help them determine a next play. We're going to be talking about that today, and I think a good way to start this segment is on what is a next play, and a next play is a focus point. It's the next action that someone on your team, sales rep on your team, can take to keep them focused on moving forward, on improving, on closing sales, on increasing performance. And so if you're focused on the past or what could happen in the future or things that aren't working out for you, you're going to suck in the future, in the present moment. So the next play keeps you there.
Yeah. Or too many things, right? Like, I feel like oftentimes you'll get like a sales leader. It's like, I want you to do this, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do this. And they give them like this long list of like 10 things to do this week. And then they just get like analysis by paralysis. Like, all right, I got to do all these things, and then none of them happen. Right. So I think it's a mixture of all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it means many things. I think you're so spot on. And like, I find myself sometimes occasionally.
I think everybody does.
Giving yourself, but you can't, because it's like, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but from all the research that I've done, when you give someone one core focus or area of improvement, they typically do much better.
Totally.
And also, if you look at like the course of a year, if you're focused on one thing you're going to improve on every week, that's a 50x improvement over the course of the year.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but as a sales leader, because we have the pressure of hitting numbers, you don't think in terms of weeks, you think in terms of calls or visits, or like you got to do all these different things on the next visit,
Yeah.
And so like, I get that too, right? That is a thing.
Totally.
So now we talked about what is a next play. When do you give a next play, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like if I'm picking a next play, right, I'm typically looking at, it's usually going to be on some sort of coaching session.
Yeah.
So on a Monday morning or whenever you're doing those with your teams, which I always recommend doing them as close to the beginning of the week as you can, I'm going to review the previous week. I'm going to go through all of their numbers. And then from there, once I've reviewed all that stuff, it's like we lost the background here.
We work, that's for sure.
But once I've reviewed all that stuff, then from there I'm just going to go through. I'm going to look where the first hole is. I'm just going to start at the beginning of the funnel.
Yeah.
And where I find the first hole in the funnel is where I'm going to fill it. Right. So if I'm looking at like the amount of appointments set, for example.
Yeah.
Right. And I see that that's low, right? I'm then going to look back at like how many doors, this is obviously for direct salespeople, right? But how many doors did you knock? Or if you're in a call center, how many calls did you make? How many, stuff like that, right? And I'm going to look through that, and I'm going to see, hey, did you work enough hours, right? Look at the first part. Did you knock enough doors? Did you talk to enough people? What were you doing throughout the week? And then from there, I'll identify what needs to happen from there.
Yeah.
And then from there, if they did knock enough doors, they set enough appointments, okay, cool. What's the next thing? I'm just going to kind of consistently go through the funnel until I find the breakage point. And then from there, we're going to fill that to me, that's always their next play.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. So there's two times, right? There's in your formal one-on-one sessions, which you should be having. If you're in a sales leadership role, you've got to be having one-on-one. We call them next play sessions. I don't care what you call them, but meeting one-on-one where you're working with your sales rep on building the business, not working in it. The other time you will be prescribing next plays or giving next plays is ad hoc. So you're in the office or you get a phone call and something's going on and we've got to give a next play. So the way you just described would be in a one-on-one meeting, right? Or in a team meeting where you're reviewing KPIs.
Yeah.
I love that because like a lot of people make decisions or choose next plays based on feelings versus facts.
Totally. Yeah. It's like you sit down with, it actually drives me crazy. You'll sit down and someone's doing a one-on-one with somebody and the person that, you've got like so-called the regional manager is, sitting down doing a one-on-one with the area manager. And the area manager is like giving a story on why they didn't produce last week. And then they're creating a next play based on that.
Right.
It's like, that doesn't even,
it's the way they feel.
Real, right? It's a what happened based on whatever story they told themselves that week, which might a lot of times it's not even a real thing. It's just what they told themselves why they couldn't produce that week.
Right. And it's in the now. It's the feelings that they have from the last 3 calls that they had or visits or whatever that didn't go well. And that's like, so they're like, I feel like everyone just doesn't have the money. I feel like everybody's not interested. I feel like it's like when you look at the numbers, 2 out of 9 people you talk to were totally not financially capable, or 2 out of the 9, you know what I mean? But I feel is like, so I guess you've got to have the KPIs in place.
Totally.
Not I guess, but you've got to have the KPIs in place. And your next play should totally be developed or formed or prescribed. I like that word, prescribed.
Prescribed. Yeah, that's a good one.
Prescribed based on the KPIs, based on the facts. And then on the ad hoc side, we'll talk about how do you choose a next play, what does a next play consist of, et cetera. But on the ad hoc side, I think I've shared this on a podcast before, but the way I've always gone about choosing a next play, and then I'll let you kind of give yours, is I use a process called win. So how do you take someone from a loss to a win? Is number one, you got to figure out what do they want? What are they trying to do that's not working out for them? So that's the W, want. The I is issue. What's the issue? What's stopping them from getting what they want? And then what's the next play? The N. So if you're in a leadership role and someone's like stuck, they're frustrated, they're freaking out. It's like, okay, they're at a loss right now. How do we get them to a win? Let's sit down with them. Cool. What's going on? Tell me, what are you trying to do? Cool. Why didn't it work? What's the issue? The I. And then, okay, let's determine the next play. Because you might not have like all the data and the facts in front of you at every moment.
A lot of times that's simply a lot of times going to be feeling, right? But that feeling is them frustrated and stuck and not moving forward.
Exactly.
And so you got to come up with something. I've never had an acronym for it, but I do the same thing, right? I'm like, okay, cool. Like, tell me about it. What's happening? Why are you
like that
experiencing
acronym,
this?
don't you?
Yeah, it's good. All right.
Take them to a win.
Yeah, but yeah, same things. Let's talk about it. What's the issue? What's going on? Okay, cool. So, and then let's just find a workaround. Let's find a way through it so we can identify a next play. So that's not stopping you from producing this week or this day or this hour or whatever it is. So,
love that.
Yeah.
Do you find that your sales managers are in that position often where they're having to deal with like losses and situations like that all the time?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think pretty consistently. The thing that's like can be frustrating about it is a lot of times they just don't do anything about it, right? Like they just almost like sit on their thumb and they're like, all right, well, I'm having this problem. And
hopefully it goes away.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't like bring it to light. Sometimes it like, I appreciate it when they just like figure it out for themselves, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Obviously, what's always going to be best is if they just come to you and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
How do I get through this? But other times they just are like, whatever.
Right. And here's what I think I should do. That's the best. If they come to you with that, now you're like, you're in a good spot.
Totally. Yeah. But the worst is when they don't do anything about it. They're just like, well, I'm experiencing this thing. And they just like let the week go by or the month go by or whatever. And you're like, why didn't you say something? Right. Like I found out, I mean, just as an example, right. That like there was the way that we had like payroll set up for people in Reno, Nevada, right, was different than the rest of the company. Right. And like I found out 3 months later that someone like they were struggling with getting paid. I'm like, this is the first I'm hearing about it. Like, why didn't you bring this up to me? Because we could have solved this 3 months ago. Like when people, and that was a real life example that happened a few months ago. Things like that. It's just talk, right? Communicate, bring it up, and then you can come up with some solution to get stuff fixed, right?
Right.
Right. Stuff's the worst thing you can do.
Totally. So if you're in a sales leadership role and you have people, sales reps that are frustrated, they're at a loss, there's always a next play, right? And like our deal is there is no failure, there's only your next play.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you can help anybody get to a next play. And I do believe that it is I'm covering myself here, that it is an art, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like how good are you at sales leadership is a direct correlation, and how good you are as a coach and someone and at accountability and at leadership as a whole is your ability to be able to read people, read the situation, and prescribe plays, right? At the end of the day, like that's, and the good thing about using Next Play is you can grade your managers.
Totally.
So what we do is how many plays, how many one-on-ones did you have? How many plays did you prescribe? How many of those plays were executed, and what were the result of those plays? So we can report back to their leader, that company's leadership team, and say, here's a report on your managers. Here's how well they're coaching, and here's how well they're not.
Yeah.
And they're either going to, and if you're listening, if you're a coach, you're either going to develop that skill set or not, right? But it is the ability in an ad hoc situation to read the person, read what's going on, and prescribe a good play, and analyze data. And be able to make just prescribe a play.
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, like, so most sales leaders, for the most part, right, they've come from sales. At some point, they were a salesperson.
Totally.
And really, like, it's the same skill, right? You're sitting in a house, or you're sitting on the phone, or wherever you're selling, right? And you have to sit there, you have to read the person, you have to figure out what the issue is and how you fill the problem, right? I think it's very applicable from like a sales skill over to, you know, a leading skill, right?
Yeah.
It's really the same thing. And a lot of people overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
It's really the same thing. You just got to figure out how to do it in a little bit different manner.
Yeah. Why do you feel like people overcomplicate it?
I mean, I think people overcomplicate everything, right? Like, you know, whenever there's an issue in front of people, overcomplicate it. And so I think they just do it simply because I think it's a lot of times just human nature. But it's really simple. It's not that hard. Just learn to read people, learn to like work through issues. And it's, you know, it's the same thing as overcoming an objection in a house, right? Yeah. It's the same thing. It's just another objection. Let's figure it out. Let's move through.
And you do it through practice. Like when you're in a position and you're in a leadership role and you're constantly working with your team and you're constantly prescribing plays after play after play, you're going to get good at it. You know what I mean? Like, but if you're doing it randomly, you're not consistently meeting with your team, you're not going to get that good at it. Right. And so then coaching skills are just not going to.
Yeah. They're not going to develop, get any better. They're going to stay the same or get worse too. So
that too.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk about what consists of a play, right? So if I tell you, here's what you're going to go and do, that is not a play, right? There's 3 things that have to consist of every play, and it's really easy. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And when are you going to do it by? It's really that simple, right? I'll tell you, like, each one of those, because there used to be more questions, and then there were less questions. And then I was like, no, these are the 3 things that if you want someone to take action confidently, then these are the 3 things that must be answered by you as the leader, or also, you know, in help created by the sales rep, so that they feel confident going and doing it. Because if you just have the what and they don't know how, they're not going to feel confident doing it.
Yeah.
If you have the what and the how, but you don't have the when, then when you meet with them again and you ask them how it went, they're going to say, "Oh, I didn't get to it.
I didn't get to it. Yeah, I'm working on it." Yeah, totally.
So, and you might be saying like, the how, that seems so simple, but I can't tell you how many times I've went over the how of like how to send a calendar invite and then watching people not be able to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy how often like there's like simple things, right? And I've had the exact same thing. Calendar invites are just simple technology stuff, right? Like you just assume people know how to do things all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like
because you do it all the time.
Because you do it all the time. Like, you know, like one is like how to hold your people accountable, right? Like, hey, you need to do this to hold people accountable, but you don't go through the actual like process of like, this is exactly what you do. And the majority of people aren't good at it, right? And it's not because of anything they've done, they just have never done it before. You know?
Right.
And or
there's no process to it.
Yeah, or they have done it and they just haven't done it successfully. So yeah, super important to have each one of those things. You just have to, it has to be time bound. You gotta, you know, what is it, so that's super clear and as clear as possible. Here's exactly how you do it, move forward. So
let's like really go next level value here and talk about examples of plays. So let's walk through, you know, direct sales. You do direct sales. It's pretty straightforward, right? Let's talk about the funnel between a lead to knocking to connect to a booked meeting, from booked meeting to proposal of some sort. Let's talk about these conversions and where some of the conversions are falling short. What are some of the plays that you would potentially prescribe.
Mhm.
So let's just talk about the very top of the funnel, right?
Yeah.
So lead comes in, doors knocked, and meeting isn't booked.
Yeah.
There's a connect, like a high connect.
Isn't booked?
Yeah, like let's say you have a rep who's got a really high connect rate, but he's not booking the meeting.
Yeah.
What's a play? Like, how would you walk me through that?
Yeah, good question. So typically what that's going to look like is like, how are you setting the appointment, right? So, our process would be like, typically the funnel that we look at is like, how many hours did you work? How many doors did you knock? How many conversations did you have? How many appointments did you set? And the appointment set is the booked, right? That's kind of the funnel we look at. If we see that somebody is, getting a lot of people entered into the system, but not actually booking the appointment, which doesn't happen too often for the most part. It's just kind of the process you go through. I'm going to sit down and a couple things. So in order to identify.
Real quick, before you share that, what is like a good conversion between conversation and booked appointments? Like, you have 10 conversations. How many booked appointments should you have?
You should be seeing about 3.
Got it.
So 3, so 30% or so. But it varies per person. You get people that have 10 conversations and, book 9 appointments, or 8 appointments. Usually it's not that high. That might be a good day for them, but usually
on average, 30%.
About 30%. Yeah.
Got it.
So what I would do is I'm going to jump into the, obviously I can't be on every door, right? And usually these aren't the conversations I'm having. I'm usually having the conversations with the leadership. But if I was sitting down with, we call them solar pros and appointment setter, right? I would sit down and I would say, okay, cool. Let's sit down and let's actually listen to some of the recordings of people that you talk to. And I'm going to listen to the way that they were presenting the appointment to somebody, because oftentimes it's usually that they're not being very presumptive. They're not actually pushing through to and they're not assuming the sale, right?
Yeah.
They're just saying like, hey, so when's
There's
a good
no
time?
conviction.
Yeah, it's like, when's a good time for you? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Like, let me get with my wife. Instead of just going through and saying, hey, I've got time tonight at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. Which one's better for you? So I'm going to listen to those things and I'm going to see how they were doing it previously. Then from there, I'm going to then jump in and provide some coaching. So I would look at it and say, okay, Richie, looks like, listening to your wording here, you weren't being very assumptive in your language as you were setting the appointment, and you were leaving it very open-ended. So the next play would be, hey, I want you to first practice exactly how to say it, right? So here's the exact wording for you. And then I want you to go out and then do this and give them a script, right?
Yeah.
Go out and do this exact wording next time. And then it may not work the first time, right? But you're going to get better and better and better at it, and make sure you continue to record. Have 10 conversations that are recorded inside Xero, and then come back on Wednesday and we'll see how you did.
Love that. So you got you're going to use this script and work on your conviction and tonality. How you're going to memorize this, I assume, right? And read it.
Yeah.
And when are you going to do this? You got to do this by your next call, because we're going to listen to the next 10.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe you won't be able to listen to all 10, but you'll cherry pick 3 or 4.
Go through a couple. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I want to note is, do you, because I found this to be way more productive in getting buy-in, is do you share with them the play, or do you know what the play is, but you try to ask them like, hey, what do you, based on listening to this, what do you think you could do better here, and getting them to come up with the what, and then you coach them on the how and the when?
Totally depends on who it is, how long they've been with this, stuff like that. So in this scenario, that's going to be, I guess in this one, right, that was probably more of a newer person.
Yeah.
That doesn't do it. And they're probably not going to know what it is. But if I was having this conversation with a leader, as far as their entire team, they're going to pick it out, and I would then kind of cherry pick and let them do it.
Yeah.
So it just depends on who I'm meeting with.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, from a standpoint of getting buy-in, right? Especially from seasoned people.
Yeah.
If someone's brand new, you're gonna give them the play.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. For somebody that's seasoned, just most people know what they should be doing or could be doing, especially if you're listening to a call. Yeah. And getting them to come to a realization of what they should do, and then coaching them through the how. Yeah. I found to be much more productive.
Totally.
I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's also a time crunch. If you're in a time crunch and you got to go, like, just give a play.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
You know, but all right. So let's give another scenario. Real quick before we do another scenario, let's cap this on what do you do with that play? So we give them the play, they go and do it. Now it's not just the play, but it's the accountability of doing the play.
Yeah.
Right. So, what we teach and what we do is once you've given them the play, you have to consistently have a meeting with them every week. So you're going to meet with them the following week.
Yeah.
And as part of that next session, you're going to go over the play and their execution of it and what that result was.
Yeah. So like I'll always, when I'm doing stuff like this, most of the time mine are all in one-on-one settings, which I usually do on like Mondays, right? I'll usually have kind of a quick like follow-up meeting every Thursday, just like, hey, how's the week going? How are we looking and stuff like that. Make any adjustments needed. But usually the follow-up is going to be the next Monday, right? So I'll say, okay, cool, get this done. This is the next play for next week. We're going to discuss it on our one-on-one on Monday next week, right? But if it was, this scenario right here, and I said by Wednesday, it's like, okay, cool. We've got this meeting on Wednesday at 11 o'clock, just be at the meeting on Wednesday. We're going to go over this then.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with any of this stuff, whenever you're providing a next play or any action items at all, is the follow-up, right? If you just simply give a next play and say, hey, I want you to go do this, and then you never talk about it again, it was pointless, right? And I think that happens so often. Like people are like, yeah, I want you to go do this. And then,
I never hear from him again.
Never hear from him again, right? It's just never brought up, or maybe it's brought up, but really lightly, right? And it's like, so how did this go? I didn't really get it done. Okay, cool. Just make sure you do it next time. And then we're done, right? And then we move on to, well, what's your next play now, right? And then there's just no, it's just, you might as well have not done it, right? You're not actually providing any value or any coaching.
Right. And that's why, you hit the nail on the head. It's like in the sheets that we provide, there's a play, the what, the how, and the when. And then to the right of that is a box with what's the metric that this play is going to impact. So we force the sales manager to not only write in what the play is they prescribed, but what's the metric that play is going to improve upon. So for this scenario, it would be your connect to booked appointment conversion rate.
Yeah.
I want to see that go up by 25-30%.
Yeah.
Right. As a result. And so you would put not only the play, but you would put what's the result of that play. So that when you're looking at all your managers from your perspective, or if you have a team of managers, you could see, okay, here are all the plays that I've given. If I'm a manager, or if you have a team of managers, here's the plays they've given, and here's the result of those plays and whether or not they were executed. So then you could see, is it the sales rep just not doing it, or is it the sales manager just giving awful plays that aren't actually helping?
Yeah.
And then, because like in sales, breadcrumbs, same thing with leadership. There's always a hole. Is it the rep? Is it the manager? Is it
both? Yeah.
Is it both?
Yeah.
And I've been on both sides of that.
Yeah.
So, so like having that measurement of like, what's the grade for that play? Like just like in sports, like when you run a play, there's every play has a grade. And like I remember on Monday mornings we would have, or Sunday evenings actually, we would watch game film from Saturday's game, and we would have grades on our desk, a packet with a grade.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
So like as a sales rep, sales is sport.
Totally.
It's a sport.
Yeah.
So you got to be graded. And so how do you get graded? You get graded on the plate from a manager's perspective. You get graded on, did the rep show to your meeting? Did the rep do the play that you gave them? And if they did do the play, what was the result of that play? Yeah. And that's your grade.
Yep.
You can average those three together
with
different weights.
Yeah, you got a 1.7 or one, whatever, right?
That's literally what we use as a GPA.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
the easiest way to
that's
do
it. Maybe we'll do that on the next video because I know we're running out of time here. But no, this is really good. So if you're in a sales leadership role, this is like, how you choose a play, how you keep the people on your team focused, engaged, motivated, moving forward, and keep them in the game. Like it's really like, especially through slumps, right? If you have sales reps that you know have potential that are going through slumps, like you've got to be there for them. You've got to be there for them, especially if you're a commission-based business.
100%. Yeah. So they'll fall off super fast if not, right? You can have a person that's like been a top performer and somehow slips into this slump, right? And then they're in their head, right? And they're thinking like, well, is this me? Is it the company? Is it this? And they usually end up blaming the company, right? And so like you're going to lose them fast unless you sit down and coach them and figure it out and coach them through it. Otherwise, they're going to find somebody else to coach them through it so they can get through it.
And I know this is kind of like for time sensitive, like this is when it could become a daily thing. Connect on a morning session.
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
So, all right, awesome. Well, listen, thank you all so much for listening to Sales Leadership Ascension, a series of the Next Play podcast. We really appreciate having you. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like the show if you got something out of it. And if you enjoyed it as well on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcast, leave us a review. Really appreciate it. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
See you, everyone.
Adios.